And I cannot believe that in 2024 that a politician needs to say here and say that we need to get tougher on terror that is living in our streets, in our neighborhoods, working out at the gyms, eating at the restaurants, and schooling in our universities.
שלום לימור.
שלום שי.
את ראיינת את מליסה לנצמן, היא סגנית יושב ראש מפלגת השמרנים.
נכון, אני אגיד שהיא כוכבת עולה בפוליטיקה הקנדית, צעירה יחסית. אני יכולה להגיד שהיא כמובן יהודייה, וכמובן היא גם ציונית, היא מדברת בלי לחשוש, היא מקסחת את הממשלה הנוכחית, אפשר לראות את זה ממש בכל מקום. הייתה שיחה מאוד מעניינת איתה, היא לא נותנת הנחות לאף אחד, היא בודקת כל מה שהיא אומרת. אני בטוחה שאם המפלגה השמרנית תהיה המפלגה הגדולה ותקים את הממשלה הבאה בקנדה באוקטובר 2025, היא תהיה בעלת תפקיד משמעותי. שאלתי אותה גם על זה. היא דיברה על איך קנדה בעבר בחרה תמיד בציביליזציה מול ברבריזם, ואיך עם הממשלה הזאת הכל השתנה, ואיך התקווה שלה היא להחזיר את קנדה למקומות טובים יותר ממה שנמצאת בהם עכשיו.
בוא נראה.
So hello Meliса Lenzman, you are the member of Parliament for Thornhill, and you are the deputy leader of the Conservative Party. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
I want to ask you first, if you are Deputy Prime Minister tomorrow in a new government, obviously, so what would be the top 3 things you wish to address?
Well, I'm not going to get ahead of ourselves, but I would be honored to serve in whatever capacity I'm asked when we have a new government, not if in this country, and it is desperately needed. But there's a couple priorities in which we are going to seek a new government based on, and like it is very simple. I will lay it out. We are going to axe the carbon tax. We are going to build the homes. We're going to fix the budget, and certainly we are going to stop the crime in this country. And I would add, for the context of this conversation and knowing who's listening to it, we are going to stop the hateful division that I think has been driven by our Prime Minister in this country, that has put Canadians from all faith communities, specifically the Jewish community, at risk and living in fear in their own neighborhoods.
So what do you mean when you say driven by the Prime Minister?
We used to have a principled position on our standing on choosing civilization over barbarism, and I think it is this government and their incessant fence sitting on choosing the wrong side of history that has given rise on the streets to calls for violence against a certain community based on their views. The Prime Minister in the past has used things like vaccine status as a wedge issue to divide Canadians and put a wedge between them, and it has driven up the hatred in our own country to a point that is unrecognizable to so many Canadians.
So it seems to me like sometimes you see the government is saying something against terror organizations. For example, they started sanctions against 11 personal people in the Hamas, like the Hamas leaders. But then at the same time, they would say something against Israel. So it seems like they're trying to balance it this way. And I wonder if there is a different diplomatic way to deal with it and to stand for.
Well, I will say that there is no room for moral equivalency between terrorists and those trying to defend. What we saw on October 7th and thereafter in the diaspora, and particularly in Canada, has been disheartening to everybody who chooses to stand against terror. And that's with Hamas, and that's with the IRGC, and that's with any one of the terrorist organizations, which I think we'll get into later, that operate, raise money, organize freely in this country. Hamas is a terrorist organization. It's been listed as a terrorist organization in Canada, and the gaslighting and the excuses that have been made paid for Hamas terror in this country by our media establishment, by some politicians in the House of Canada, by some politicians of the governing Liberal Party is inexcusable. And I think that it should be called out at every opportunity, no matter when.
Thank you. I'll take you to something personal because your office been vandalized recently due to your support in Israel. And I want to know, what do you personally, if you can share anything that personally touched you recently since this started in the last few months?
Look, I think there is a place to protest, and there are places that are off limits, and we're never going to say that Canadians do not have the right to protest. They absolutely do. We don't have a law problem in this country. There are enough laws for Canadians to understand what is right and what is wrong. We have an enforcement problem in this country, and despite the office in which everybody was safe and these thugs came overnight, we are talking about protests in predominantly Jewish neighborhoods. We are talking about protests in front of predominantly Jewish hospitals where sick people and their families look for healthcare, for cures, for reprieve at the worst point in their lives. We are seeing this at an increased rate all over our biggest city in Toronto. We have seen Jewish populations in places like Ottawa, a Jewish population with just over 15,000 in a city of 1 million, where they were the most targeted. Jews were the most targeted for hate. In the West Coast, there was more anti-Semitic hate crimes in Vancouver after October 7th than in all of 2002. So 22, I should say. So we have a serious issue where this stuff is tolerated. We have constantly politicians and governing parties at all levels of government saying this is not acceptable, this is not Canada, but nobody is doing anything about it. And you don't have to get that from me and my experience. You can see it all over the communities. I think what is happening in diaspora communities, what is happening in Canada is not only unacceptable, but warrants a response that is more forceful than we have seen from a government that has been silent.
So you're taking me to the next question, actually. You repeat saying anti-Semitism, but what we see is anti-Zionism is kind of a demand. I've never seen it towards any other country in the world. It's like a demand to dismantling Israel. You don't hear it towards North Korea, Iran, other countries. Just Israel is kind of like a question mark. Maybe we shouldn't have this country at all. And this is really unbelievable. I think at this point we may be able to have peace with the Palestinians before we'll have peace with the pro-Palestinians.
Yeah, look, this is something that you say that fundamentally I don't agree with. I don't think there is a difference between the anti-Zionism and the anti-Semitism that we are seeing. They are one and the same, and there are groups that hide behind the notion of anti-Zionism as something different than anti-Semitism. But when you are talking about eliminating a Jewish state, you are talking about eliminating Jewish people. From the river to the sea is a call for the elimination of the Jewish people between two parts in which Jews live. So I'm not sure that the distinction is a difference. In fact, I think for a long time in this country there has been groups, unions, school boards, our major institutions have been hiding behind the refrain that anti-Zionism, that singling out Israel is something different than anti-Semitism. And I got to tell you, the masks are off of everybody, who purported to make that distinction. It's all gone, and you can see it with the protests in our streets, and you can see it also in those who decided that they weren't going to give any light to the sexual violence that took place, where purported feminists are now ignoring the rape used by Hamas, where there are members of the House of Commons, our Parliament, calling for the reinstating of unrefunding after knowing that some of their employees took part in the October 7th homicidal massacre and were part of the kidnapping. This is all gaslighting, and it is being pushed by the government, and certainly it is being pushed by a mainstream media that is telling one side of the story. But that's nothing new here.
So what do you mean nothing new? It seems to me like there is a lot of work needed to be done, and we may lost, like, I don't know, 2 decades in campuses and other places explaining that, I don't know, even how Israel and Canada are actually allied and working together.
Israel and Canada are long-standing friends, a relationship that goes back, 70 years, or at least we'll be celebrating that anniversary very soon. This is one of Canada's greatest allies. This is a beacon of democracy, of tolerance in a region where that doesn't exist in almost any other country. We've had a long-standing friendship with Israel. It is certainly on the rocks now due to this government and their position on all of this. But the long-standing friendship runs much deeper than the events of October 7th. And we were friends. We were good friends 8 years ago before this prime minister, and we will be good friends after this prime minister is gone, when we restore a relationship with whomever is in government or is in power in Israel, to make sure that our people-to-people ties remain steadfast, to our technology exchange remains steadfast, and that Canada and Israel can share in the bounty of freedom, of democracy, of the rule of law, which we have always shared.
Thank you. What do you think the government or even parliament members can do to change all this in campuses, and all the calls towards health workers to remove Zionist health worker from the facility? How do you measure Zionists? This takes us to really dark times. So
yeah, it certainly does, and we've seen examples of that where just recently a conference sidelined a speaker who once served in the IDF. It's very simple with government. We provide funding to many of the organizations that are complicit in this anti-Semitism, in this singling out, and that funding should stop. I think on campus the same exists for the provincial government that funds them to a great degree. I think that funding should have strings attached. They have strings attached on all kinds of other measures, and I think the most important measure is that every student on every campus can feel safe going to school. And until that happens, the universities certainly should be on the hook. I think our community in the diaspora that donates and funds university programs should think twice about where those tax dollars are, or where those dollars are going, I should say, where those private dollars are going. And I think one of the biggest problems that we have not addressed in this country is the notion of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that fail to mention anti-Semitism, that fail to mention Jews. And in fact, they should be gone. They have done nothing but destroy the notion of who is the victim and who is the oppressor, and they have pitted populations against each other to the point where it doesn't even make sense anymore. So I hope to see a federal government one day that takes all of its stock out of these DEI programs and restores a foundation where merit and hard work are rewarded for exactly what they are.
So you mentioned money, and I know the Conservatives are going after IRGC, the Iranian regime, all the money laundering, external interference in elections. Do you believe that Canada is currently kind of like a heaven for terrorists?
Well, it's not that I think, it's that we know that 700 IRGC agents that we know of, this is a number that we know of, are currently taking refuge in this country. The IRGC is one of the most destabilizing regimes, or one of the most destabilizing forces in the world, in the region, in the whole world, towards their population. And to watch those IRGC members who can raise money, who can organize, who can freely congregate in this country is troubling. It is not so far away from where I'm sitting. We've had IRGC members of the Iranian regime that oppresses its own people, kills women, throws gay people off of roofs, are working out in a chain here. We have Good Life Fitness. It's a gym. They are eating in restaurants freely and openly. Their kids are attending universities here, and that terrorizes a population of Iranian Canadians who have moved here to run away from the regime, to run away from a dark mullah controlled Iran, to live a better, freer life in Canada. And it is our responsibility as government, as leaders, as a future government, to ensure that every single Canadian feels safe in Canada. And I cannot believe that in 2024 that a politician needs to say here and say that we need to get tougher on terror that is living in our streets, in our neighborhoods, working out at the gyms, eating at the restaurants, and schooling in our universities. I cannot believe I even have to say that to you on a call, and certainly we will see that change when there is a new government that comes to power in Canada.
Thank you. And I want to ask you, I have two more questions. If you kindly share, I know you visited Israel after October 7th. Is there anything you feel like, okay, I learned something new and Canadians should know about that?
You know, I've been to Israel many times before that trip, and with family there, with parents who at one point in their lives lived there. I had never seen in Israel both so united in their resolve to make sure that there will be a time in the future where Israelis can live in peace and security safely in the communities that they were chased out of by Hamas terrorists. But also there was a sadness and an anger there from many for the first time, not necessarily knowing what comes next, how it's all going to unfold, and whether they will be successful. For the first time in Israel's history, I think that you saw an uncertainty there that was very uncomfortable. And I think that since that, I went quite soon after the October 7th attacks. I was able to go down south to tour a kibbutz, and you couldn't even explain, not even the images, not even the videos could have done justice to what had happened there. And watching the world all be on side on October 7th and 8th and 9th, and by October 10th, the world had changed its tune. And all of a sudden, October 7th was erased from history. So it was important that I, as a parliamentarian, see it. I, as a open Zionist, see it. And I was happy that some of my colleagues decided to see it as well. I hope, I hope that date is never forgotten. That we are not gaslighted by our own government and our own media and our own unions and our own campuses to forget about October 7th. And I think more people need to see the chaos and the destruction that happened on that very dark day in human history.
Thank you. Do you have family in Israel?
I do. I have some family, some even first cousins. It wasn't one of those familiar trips. Some with kids now serving, some in the States who have kids serving as lone soldiers. So it is an incredibly trying time for anybody. And from this Canadian, it is God bless those who put their lives on the line to save the Jewish people and the Jewish state.
Yeah, thank you. So if you are deputy minister tomorrow, or let's say if you are in the government tomorrow, what would be your favorite role?
I'll be honored to serve in whatever capacity that is asked of me, but I want to make sure that every single Canadian, whether you came here, whether you were born here, has the ability to work hard move ahead, buy a home, raise a family. All of that has been destroyed in 8 short years. We have doubled the price of housing, of rent, of mortgage payments. Inflation and interest is out of control, and we want to restore that Canadian dream back to those who have come here, those who will come here in the future, and have the promise of Canada that my parents enjoyed, that I enjoyed well before this government came here. So, like I said, we're going to axe the tax, we're going to build the homes, we're going to fix the budget, and we're going to stop the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder that has taken over our streets.
Thank you very much, Meliса Lenzman. You are the member of Parliament for Thornhill, and you are the deputy leader of the Conservative. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for having me.
היה מעניין אם היא תקבל איזה תפקיד, נגיד שרת החוץ, ואז נוכל להגיד שדיברנו עם שרת החוץ.
אכן, אנחנו היינו שם קודם. בכל מקרה, אנחנו מראיינים מועמדים של מפלגות שונות, אז אם יש מישהו שאתם רוצים לשמוע אותו ולשאול אותו שאלות, אז אתם מוזמנים לכתוב לנו כאן בתגובות, ואנחנו ניצור איתם קשר ונשמע מה יש להם להגיד. תודה רבה, לייק, סאבסקרייב ושיר.
תודה, ביי לימור.
ביי.